Hey guys, back with another impressions video on this game, Batman Arkham Knight. Yeah, the PC version, which I guess I should talk about that right away. The PC version of this game, it's pretty bad. It's a pretty terrible port. The big news with the PC port is that it actually got pulled off of Steam. And unfortunately, I did pre-order the PC version. And you know what? I was able to actually get it running well. Which I guess, I don't know, some people couldn't get it running too well. I did have to lower the settings quite a bit and turn off some like certain settings and things like that. But I eventually did get it running at a pretty reasonable, like 45 frames per second, which is better than like the locked 30 frames per second of the PS4 version. But the PC version's missing graphics options that the PS4 version has, and there's a bunch of glitches and things with it. And if you don't have a great computer, it probably runs like shit. And, you know, they have released one patch for it, and I think that might have been what fixed things for me, because I didn't play this until a couple days after release. But I did eventually get through the game. It ran fine for me. So, yeah, I would say if you're planning on playing this game, go with the PS4 version. Stay away from the PC port until they've fixed all the issues. But that said, it should have definitely been pulled from Steam, but I don't know. It ran okay for me, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it definitely has its issues, the PC port of this game. That said, Arkham Knight. What did I think of Arkham Knight? Obviously, it got really great reviews. People seem to be absolutely loving this game. One of the most highest rated games of the year. Obviously, a lot of hype for it. And I gotta say, I find this game extremely overrated. That's not to say it's bad. It's certainly not a bad game. In fact, GameSpot, they gave it a 7 out of 10, and I guess people went right after the reviewer for that, and people got pissed that this game got a 7 out of 10. And you know what? I kind of agree with that review after reading it. I'm actually even less kind on this game. This has a lot of issues, this game. And pretty much all of them to do with gameplay, and I'll talk about that later. Now, the series in general, I did play Batman Arkham Asylum back when that came out, and I loved that game. I thought it was amazing. Still, I think, a better game than this as well. It had a Metroidvania feel to that game, and it was very tightly focused and tightly paced. This game has the open world Ubisoft syndrome. And it's a mess. This game is incredibly inconsistent, in my opinion. 1 minute I'm loving it, the next minute I'm absolutely hating it, and it was like that throughout the entire game. The main story, I think is pretty compelling most of the time, but the side missions are where this game really falls apart, and some of the gameplay mechanics. But again, I'll talk about that later. Arkham Asylum, played through that and loved it, and Arkham City came out, and I didn't play it. The open world nature was a bit of a turnoff for me, and for whatever reason, I just didn't get around to playing it. Then Arkham Origins came out, and that got a mixed reception. And then, of course, we have Arkham Knight, and I don't have the Batman fatigue, even though this game seems to be fairly similar to Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, and done by the same developer, Rocksteady Studios. They did not do Arkham Origins. And, if I had played all the Batman games, I probably would have liked this game even less. But I guess we'll get into things, right? I'll talk about the story first off. It takes place, I think, a year after Arkham City, and I did read up on the story of that game and the ending of that game to kind of get myself to grips with the story in this game. And this game explains a lot of it in like bios and like character bios and things like that. So I don't think you actually need to play Arkham City or Origins to actually play and enjoy this from a story's perspective. But the story itself, it takes place in Gotham City, and Scarecrow has released a fear toxin over Gotham City, and all the civilians are evacuated, and leaving only criminals and the Gotham PD. And you have to kind of take care of things. Obviously, it's more than that. Plenty of classic Batman villains for you to find, and there's a lot of fan service for people that love Batman. Like I said before, I'm not a huge comic book person, and I do like Batman though. Honestly, if out of all the superheroes, Batman would probably be my favorite. I think there's something more appealing about Batman as opposed to other superheroes. Probably I don't want to say it's grounded in reality, but I don't know. The darker tone of Batman has always appealed to me, and I think he's had the best video games and movies. The Dark Knight trilogy I really enjoy, and like I said before, Arkham Asylum I really enjoyed. That said, I'm not obsessed about Batman, but I did actually enjoy the story overall in this game. I know a lot of people are really down on it, and I can understand why. The story is very predictable and very obvious. I think most people playing through this game are going to guess all the twists. There's a character called the Arkham Knight in this game that's after you, and there's a whole like you're trying to figure out his identity, and it really wasn't a surprise by the time you figure out his identity. But the story is generally, I think, fairly well written, and it's very dark. I like how dark it is. And I found myself fairly invested in what was going on, and I actually cared what happened. And I generally enjoy the characters and the villains in Batman, except the Riddler and Harley Quinn. I fucking hate those characters. I always have. I always will, and I hate them here as well. Luckily, Harley Quinn's not in it too much. The Riddler, of course, is back. You have all the fucking trophies you have to collect and do all those riddles. But we'll talk about that in the gameplay, which I might as well talk about that now because I mean I basically talked about the story enough. The gameplay is I like a lot of it and I hate a lot of it. It's an open world. You've got Gotham City. It's open for you to explore. That said, it's crammed with details. Of course, there's no civilians roaming around, but there's plenty of criminals. The city looks fantastic. It's not too big, which I like. It doesn't take too long to traverse around these environments. Apparently, like with Arkham City, you've got your grapple hook, and flying throughout the city, it's really fun. But the main, addition with Arkham Knight is the Batmobile, another method of transportation, and you can also use it to do like these tank sections is what I'll call them. There's also some chase sequences that kind of play out like Burnout a bit. I actually don't mind those too much, but the Batmobile sequences have gotten a mixed reception, to say the least. People either love these or hate them. Of course, I happen to be right in the middle, probably leaning some more towards hate. But it's not really the Batmobile sections themselves that I hate so much. It's how the Batmobile is such a major focus in this game, and it drives me nuts, honestly. I'd say for the main story, for instance, more than half of it, I'd say you're in the Batmobile, and like I was saying, you can use it to go around the city, and you can go into a battle mode where you can kind of control it like a tank, and you have a turret, and you kind of destroy enemy tanks. And these sections are basically glorified turret sections. And they start out pretty basic. Eventually you'll get new abilities. There's a skill tree in this game, of course. And it does get a bit better once you get more abilities, like EMP blasts and things like that. But I don't know, I never quite found it incredibly engaging. And it's very tedious, too. These tank sections last forever. You're just sitting there destroying countless tanks that just keep coming and coming. And I don't know, it gets old. And there's just way too many of these sections. And another thing, traveling through Gotham City is so much more enjoyable using the grapple hook and flying across the city. I like how there's a kind of waypoint showing you where to go when you're in the Batmobile, but in terms of actually controlling it throughout the city, tanks will constantly be on your ass when you're trying to get to point A to point B. So the whole time I was just like, well, fuck this. Why am I going to drive across the city in this when I can just fly across the city and hassle-free, and it's more enjoyable that way? So I don't know. I don't think it's a really great addition to the series, honestly. I don't know. I'd like to hear some other people's opinions on this, especially people that really enjoyed Arkham City. But yeah, I don't know. I'm mixed on the Batmobile. I'm not crazy about it. So yeah, like I was saying before, the main story is fairly compelling. There's a lot of variety to the gameplay here. Like I mentioned, there's skill trees, plenty of gadgets for you to use. Your bat claw, your bat boomerang. You can kind of hack turrets and things like that. I don't want to spoil all the different gadgets, but there's plenty of them. And I will say, the most enjoyable sections of this game are the sections that were already in Arkham Asylum. The Predator sections, where you'll come into a giant room with grates and all these different statues and ways to dispatch your enemies. And there's all these enemies, and you got to take them all out, being really stealthy. And those are my favorite sections. Those were my favorite section of Arkham Asylum, and it was mostly composed of those. And it's my favorite thing here. and there's not that much of a difference really between the two sections. Other than that, you have your combat, which the combat is another part of the series that gets a mixed reception. Obviously, it was kind of a huge influence on plenty of other Western games, including The Witcher 3 pretty recently. And the combat, it felt the same as Arkham Asylum. It's flashy. It's mostly pretty enjoyable. It packs a nice punch. Well, you don't really kill the enemies, but beating up the enemies, it feels satisfying. That said, like, from the halfway point up until the ending of the game, they like to throw different types of enemies at you, and these enemies can only be dispatched using very specific combos. And when they started to throw in these enemies, I found the combat to get pretty tedious, and it kind of ruined like the variety of the combat. The fun of it to me was like, pulling off all these different combos and using all your gadgets and things to fight these enemies. But later in the game, you have to basically use very specific combos, and I don't know, it's not that fun. That said, I don't really hate the combat. It can be fun, but I understand why people would not like it. I do understand why people are not into this combat system so much. And I really wish other developers would stop borrowing from it. I mean, it works fine in the Asylum games, but please stop bringing it into other games. I think there's much better combat systems out there, personally. But yeah, I will mention again. I'm going to start positive. I'm starting positive mostly here, but there are these like detective sequences that apparently were in Arkham Origins. I didn't know they were introduced in that game. I thought they were introduced into this game for the longest time. And I love these sections. There's not too many of them, but they're really cool and unique. And they might actually be my favorite parts of the games, where you have like this camera footage that you have to kind of manipulate and rewind and forward in time. And you'll see on the screen like it's divided into grids, and you have to kind of like pinpoint different parts of this footage to kind of, solve a murder or something as a part of the story. I don't want to spoil what you have to do in these sequences, but they're kind of hard to describe, but they're really cool, and it makes you feel like you're a detective. They're really awesome. They're simple. They're not too complex or anything. Like, they're not difficult or anything like that, but I thought it was a refreshing change of pace. And I don't know, I really love those sections. I thought those were really cool and unique. But let's move on to the stuff I really hated about this game. First off, the puzzle solving. Okay, there's one section of the main campaign where you're on an airship, and this whole entire section I fucking hated. I was almost ready to quit the game during this section. Like, it was driving me nuts, where you have to use your gadget to solve these really simple, tedious puzzles. And at one point, you're even doing a box-pushing puzzle. Now, granted, you're kind of like tilting the airship to move these crates, but I mean, it's basically a glorified box-pushing puzzle. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm fucking Batman. Why am I doing this garbage? I don't want to be doing this. Like, it's I don't know. It really was frustrating, and there's a lot of puzzle solving in this game, and it's like most of the game is like puzzle solving and Batmobile sections. And there's even puzzle solving with the Batmobile, where you have to like manipulate ramps to kind of like go across gaps. The Riddler has his own side mission, which starts off with like this racetrack where you're kind of solving puzzles somewhat as you're racing through this track. And it's awful. Like, I hate this. I hate that stuff. Granted, that's preference. Some people might really enjoy that, but personally, I hated that kind of stuff, and there's too much of it. Like I was saying, like, very inconsistent. You might be doing an awesome Predator sequence, and then the next thing you know, you're doing one of these lame puzzle-solving sequences that just drag on and on and on. The main campaign also, I think, is a little too long. It took me 15 hours to finish just the main story, which is a bit much, I think. Although, I guess I did spend some time doing the side missions, so let's talk about the side missions. Like, they're pulled straight from an Ubisoft game. Like, everything I hate about Ubisoft games is in this game, as far as, like, an open-world design goes. So you have your main mission that you can tackle, and then you have a bunch of these side missions, and the majority of them are absolutely terrible. Absolutely fucking terrible. Like, what do we got here with some of these side missions? These APC missions where you have to, like, destroy these mines that are in the ground, and you remove the mine, and then you have like a defense sequence where a bunch of tanks start coming in, you get in your Batmobile, and you just keep destroying them over and over and over again for like 5 minutes, and there you go. That's one mine removed. Now do it 15 more times. Fun. Like, and granted, all these side missions will give you skill points, and that was the annoying thing, because I felt like I needed to do these side missions, and every time I would try them, I'd be like, fuck, I don't want to be doing this. I just want to, get on with the main mission. What else is there? And a lot of these tie with some of the villains. There's a mission where Two-Face and his minions are robbing banks, and that was like they're the Predator type sequences, but again, you have to do like 5 of them in a row, and they just get really repetitive. And all these side missions, you have to repeat them over and over and over again until you're fully done them. There's APCs that you have to chase, and that's kind of boring. There's towers where you clear all the enemies, and then you've cleared the tower, and go find the next 10 towers and do all those. You have the Penguin. His guys are have caches of weapons. You got to go in, dispatch all the enemies, destroy the cache. And before that, you have to chase this truck all around the city, and then you got to do that 5 more times. And then the worst side quest of them all is the fucking Riddler one. I hate the Riddler one. Like with Arkham Asylum, there's all these Riddler trophies and Riddler clues you have to figure out. 246 of them to be exact. Yeah, fucking ridiculous. Oh, and I have to mention, if you want the true ending of this game, there's 3 different endings: the main ending, a true ending, and then a true ending. If you want that true ending, you have to do every side mission and get every Riddler trophy. I didn't do that. I looked up the 2 true endings on YouTube because I couldn't be bothered to do that. But yeah, like I was saying, the Riddler missions, I find them so fucking tedious. And it's so repetitive. Like all these missions, they wouldn't be bad if you only had to do them a few times each, but you have to do them so many times, it just gets old. It gets really tiring. And it was, I don't know, that whole portion of the game to me, it was a huge letdown, and it was really annoying to see that, because Ubisoft games have that garbage going on. And admittedly, yes, you can kind of ignore them for the most part, but again, like I was saying, if you want the true ending, you have to actually do all these side missions and the true ending, and that, I don't know, that really just pissed me off. But yeah, what else is there to say about gameplay? I mean, that about covers it. It can be fun, and I'd say for the most part, it is a pretty fun game, but I don't know, it's one of those things where the open world, I feel, is just a huge step back from Arkham Asylum. I don't think the Batman series really needed to go open world, and maybe Arkham City is better, maybe it doesn't have a lot of the Ubisoft type shit that this game has, but I don't know, I've always been not really a defender of open worlds, but I've never been super against them, but this is a perfect example of, I think, why people are not so into open world game design so much, and this is like open world game design done really poorly, in my opinion. But yeah, let's talk about visuals. Gorgeous. The game looks amazing. It's probably one of the best looking games I've ever played. The city is just absolutely breathtaking. The character models are fantastic. The rain effects look amazing. It's like the presentation values of this game are absurd. It's amazing. It's obviously that where most of the budget went. I mean, it's a gorgeous fucking game. But again, I've always said before, graphics are probably my least, in my opinion, the least important part of the game. So it's yeah, it's a flashy game, but at the end of the day, it's the gameplay. Kept bugging me. Audio, it's amazing too. The voice acting's fantastic. Jonathan Banks voices Commissioner Gordon. I thought he did an amazing job. Voice acting across the board's amazing, except for Harley Quinn. God damn, her voice annoying. But yeah, the music's really great. The sound effects are fantastic, especially if you're wearing a headset. Again, the production values are insane. It's crazy. Definitely a highlight of the game overall. Another thing actually with the Batmobile sections, I guess a lot of people don't like the controls so much. I don't know. I thought it controlled fine, but I guess another thing too with the gameplay, the bosses, at least all the ones I fought in the game, are terrible as well for the most part. They're very gamey and just well, I guess one of them towards the end wasn't too bad. But there's also a boss fight that I didn't get to do because you have to do this really repetitive side mission over and over and over again to actually get to do the boss fight, and I was like, I don't care. But yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, I don't know, kind of a disappointment, especially after I loved Asylum so much. But I guess that's just me because everyone seems to love this game. It's getting crazy reviews. People are saying it's like one of the best games ever. But I don't know. I don't agree whatsoever. But at the same time, again, I think maybe I'm being a little too harsh on the game. It's not the worst ever. It generally plays pretty great. It's just again, I think it's very inconsistent design wise. But yeah, I do regret kind of buying it. That said, it might be a good purchase at $20. If it sounds like if you really loved Arkham City or Arkham Origins, this is probably a no-brainer for you, but otherwise, I don't know, I'd recommend kind of waiting for a price drop, and this will drop in price. It's a AAA Western game, so it's, yeah, I don't know. Kind of regret buying it in a way. It's certainly not going to make my Game of the Year list or anything, but yeah, that's it, guys.